on Zoom today. The regular reading. PSTA has developed several methods for ensuring the ability of the public to comment prior to and during the virtual meetings. It has established these options.
You can minimize.
During the meeting, the public can provide public comment via telephone by calling 1-305-224-1968. The meeting ID for that is 894-4538-1853. Individuals will be able to speak for 3 minutes during the public comment period. Again, to make a public comment today during the meeting, members of the public should call 1-305-224-1968 with the meeting ID of 872-4218-3631. Second option allowed for the public to submit written comments prior to the meeting is by mail to PSTA. That's obviously after the fact now. The third option allows the public to submit comments via email before the meeting at publiccomments@psta.net. For the record, I'd like to confirm that all of you can speak and see each other, so we will do a roll call. And also keep your systems muted except when you need to answer in, and then take it off mute, please. Let me start with Jay James.
Present.
Thank you. Elizabeth Olden. I saw her before. Elizabeth?
Elizabeth is on mute and we can see her.
Okay.
She's
All right.
on mute.
Thank you. Okay. Kim Rankin? Here. Thank you. Teresa Dunphy?
I'm here.
Thank you.
Show the
Sebastian
camera.
Zamardo?
Here.
Thank you.
I want
Maxwell
to know the
Johnson?
rights is ours.
Here?
No. Hit show the camera without the red.
Mark Boyce?
Show the camera, yes.
Yeah.
I see Mark Boyce.
Here.
Thank you.
1 second.
Peter Ray? See
Here.
Thank
Okay,
you.
You can hide it.
Richard Powell?
You're not
Thank
seeing it?
you. Richard
So let
McDaniel?
me see.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Conrad Langenheim?
Here.
Thank you. And are the other members attending whose name I didn't call?
Yeah, my name Roman Shorobalka.
Oh, Roman. I thought I heard you. Okay. Roman. And then also I see, is there anyone else? Okay. Right. Well, thank you.
Mom, that was my fault.
No
I
worries.
copied and pasted from last month, and you were the chair, so your name wasn't in it.
No worries.
Well, we're glad you're here. Thank you. Okay. Also, as a reminder, please remember to respond to the track
See, if
quorum
anything,
notices
you give me a
within
call.
48 hours of
Should
the
be done
email
around
that we
5.
get.
Okay.
Maybe 5:30 is the most.
Okay, now,
So
in
I
terms of the
hang
chair,
up
the next
and then
item is the
end
chair
the live.
report.
You end this and then
Just to fill you in,
Yes,
I
and
did
then
go
me too.
to the board meeting.
Yeah.
Um,
but have to do it
And
fast.
and then I rewatched it because I wanted to see it again.
So
There was
hang up
some
and
very
quickly
interesting
and live.
materials that were covered there. First, the board elected new officers for 2025. And Oldsmar Mayor Dan Saraki is the new chair. And St.
Yeah,
Petersburg
meeting
City
tomorrow
Council
too.
member Deborah
9
Fig
o'clock
Sanders is the
What
vice
time? 8?
chair.
9.
South
Yeah, you're
Pasadena
probably about
Commissioner
8
Tom
something.
Reed
Yes, sir.
is the secretary treasurer. The board then received a presentation on the Connected Community Bus Network, which we will be seeing as part of our meeting today, with some brand new updates in just a few minutes. And then additionally, the board received a very interesting and informative ridership trend presentation from Devin Deal. And in fact, he is the PSTA's planning and data and analyst manager. And the notes I've been given is if you missed the meeting, it's worth watching it. But then I talked with Bob Lasher, and we're going to have that presentation at our next our next track meeting, because I found it to be fascinating. It talked about bus sizes and how they determine which sizes of buses to have and so on. So a very interesting piece of information. Okay. Oh, and then the other thing, we talk about the Connected Community Bus Plan, I know Bob sent out a note to all of you too. They're having at the board meeting, which will be next week, they're having Bob Bagels and what, but it's a chance for
Bus network and bagels.
Thank you. A chance to again look at the revised network and they're again collecting direct input, so from citizens. All right, the next item, the Forward Pinellas report, and I'm going to turn it to Elizabeth.
Can
Elizabeth,
you hear me? Am I off mute? Am I good?
you're off mute. Thank you.
All right. We're going to start with sadness. It's a summary of the crash data presentation, and I just wanted to read a short sentence. Forward Pinellas staff will provide an overview of the crash data available to the agency and discuss recent findings related to the crashes that involve electric devices such as bicycles, scooters, and wheelchairs, not to mention cars, of course. And they put out a couple of pages of data, which it's hard to understand, but they're on it, and every month they give that overview of the crash data. The next thing is Pinellas Trail Security Task Force overview, because we all love our Pinellas Trail. And they take care of it and they monitor it. The Pinellas Trail Security Task Force monitors activities on the trail related to safety, trail user count data, and any construction activity that may affect the trail or trail users, allowing for coordinated approach to addressing issues as they arise. The Pinellas Trail Security Task Force meets quarterly, the second Tuesday of the month, 9 a.m. Next meeting is in April. And I'm sure that Fort Pinellas will get that information out to you if you need. The next thing, I had one person that I work with, it's an aide, and she doesn't ride the buses anymore because she says, quote, it's too spread out. But we're gonna hear all about it from Jacob, and he's gonna tell us everything that he's done for us and learned with all those input that he's gotten. And that's my update.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
You're
And-
welcome.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, you talk about the bicycle information and the crash. The Forward Pinellas also has like a bicycle pedestrian committee, which I'm on, and
Oh,
they are always watching to see, the needs of, what we always, we always remind everyone is that transit riders are also pedestrians at the beginning and end of all of our trips, and so they are very aware of that, and they incorporate it in their findings, which is good.
yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next we get to our information items, and the first information item, Bob and I are going to be taking you through a brainstorming discussion about the two initiatives that were offered up in the last board meeting, or the last track meeting. The idea of board member ride-alongs, and then the second is partnering with Keep Pinellas Beautiful for a couple of cleanup events that could impact PSTA riders. Bob, do you want to do this, to lead this, or do you want me to?
Sure. Well, I'll say a little and then I'll let you take the lead, but I've been here almost 20 years and I gotta tell you, these are two of some of the coolest initiatives I've ever seen, especially something where we can really take action. And I think it's pretty neat. And I was asked earlier about why the ride-alongs, the idea of the ride-along with a board member has to be done individually. And it's because you are all on a committee and you are not allowed to meet outside of this meeting and discuss PSDA business. That's actually a violation of the Florida Sunshine Laws. So if the two of you were to get together and go on a ride with Dan Saraki, it would have to be noticed, notes would have to be taken, you'd have to go through this long process. Same if two board members were to say go out with Gloria, that would have to be a noticed meeting. So that's why we're trying to keep it one-on-one.
Plus, there's another value on the one-on-one, and I was telling Bob about this earlier. The original idea for the ride-along for me came from talking with one of the former board members, a county commissioner, who said that once a year, the Meals on Wheels people will take a board member out to see how the whole system works, so they can actually, see what a user of the service, what the people putting the meals together are doing, and what the drivers are doing, and the recipients are, and they're getting this very close person-to-person understanding of it. And then just this morning, I was at another meeting where a gentleman from Forward Pinellas said that he had just had the opportunity to ride along with some people living in a homeless shelter they were veterans in a homeless shelter going to Bay Pines for some of their treatments, and he got to talk with them one-on-one, and he did, as opposed to it being a sad event, he said it was absolutely delightful, and he really had a whole different sense of what a person was like, and a veteran who ended up in a homeless environment. So my hope is that this will give our board an understanding, again, a closer understanding of us as riders, but also give us a very close understanding of the views of our board members. So, do you want to continue, Bob?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, one of the things we're hoping to move forward with is to ask members of the track to volunteer to set these up individually with board members. I won't put you on the spot now, I won't make you volunteer now, but I'd like you to think about it next month. Email me if you're interested, and then we'll go through it again next meeting, which is in person, by the way. And maybe we can think of who you might want to ask as well. Which one of the board members do you want to work with, take around, and we'll start to set it up and build it out that way. Fortunately, Darden Rice, who's on this call, reminded me things look a little hairy for the next few months with some of the county commissioners, St. Pete and the Rays and whatnot. So this process, and there's no problem, because it's a year-long initiative. We may get started a little later than we'd hope, but that's all right. We've still got plenty of time.
And hey, they may like a break from some of the more serious stuff. Just, hey, let's go out for a cup of coffee. Let's take a bus ride for a cup of coffee. So, Bob, do you want to see if there are other people with ideas on this initiative, first of all, to discuss it?
Yes, and love to hear what you think about it and what ideas you might have to make it easier or to bring it to fruition.
Does anyone think it's a bad idea? And we want to know that.
No, I think it's a good idea, and I'm down.
I think it's a good idea. I would like to do that. Take someone along the beaches.
I think it's a great idea.
Conrad has his hand up.
Yeah, does that mean we can, take him to the bathrooms and look and let him view them too at the same time?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I don't think they're going to want to go into the bathroom with you.
Well, I don't either. I would hope they would do something about it, so.
Yeah. I hear you.
Richard Powell's got his hand up.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. So we started off, I note that we cannot have a one-on-one with board members outside without taking minutes, but now.
No, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. You, as a member of TRAC, can meet with a board member. You're on 2 different committees, that's fine. But 2 board members can't meet outside of their regular board meetings without it being noticed, and 2 TRAC members can't meet and discuss TRAC. But a board member and a TRAC member are just fine.
Okay. Thanks.
My apologies, because I should have been clear with that.
And I'll get with you later via email and try to lay out some parameters, what expectations are for the cleanup and how to go about being a liaison. I don't mind being a liaison, I don't think, I've never been one before, but we'll figure it out.
Well, would you like to be the liaison to keep Pinellas Beautiful for TRAC?
Yeah, I'll do
Well,
it,
that's
but
perfect.
I'm gonna need a little support, a lot of support from you. Okay?
That's all right, that's why we're here.
And I just don't want to fall short or exceed people's expectations, that's all. That's
Well, you can
all.
always exceed our expectations.
Well, I will say this about the idea, I've participated in a great number to keep Pinellas. And there is something for everybody to do. I mean, somebody needs to check people in, somebody needs to, actually, I don't know how many other people have done this, but the items collected are recycled, they're separated, they're weighed. There's a bit of paperwork involved in it. And there's some direction. You have to have some, how many are we gonna do at a time? Or are we gonna continue to do this? These are thoughts that y'all might wanna think about and add to us later in the game. We need a staging location, security for the people on the street has to be done in conjunction with whatever governing municipality we're working in. You know, there's quite a few moving pieces. I always knew they were there, but I just showed up and picked up trash. But we can work it out, we'll figure it out.
Now, will they work with us so that, so it's not like we're on our own, right? I mean,
Oh, absolutely not. We're not on our own.
Yeah.
We're not on our own. In fact, we're gonna have to make our presence, I think we need to advertise our presence as we're doing this. You know, Keep Pinellas Beautiful is a fairly large organization. And it's all about the data, you know, what was picked up where. And so I'd like to get something off the ground before it gets stinking hot, but you know, we'll work it out.
We might be able to do that. I know they've done things at our beach park. I don't think they've done it in a year or 2, and I'll bet after the storms, they'll wanna do something down there, so that's also PSDA adjacent. So that's one that I think would work well. I'm sure
Yeah.
a lot of you can come up with others.
My biggest, and I think the biggest of all, is Grand Central Station. Maybe we ought to do some smaller ones before we jump on that.
That's a good idea.
We might need a dump truck or something to throw around there. I've done them in Gulfport, I've done them in Clam Bayou. What very often I've done is the Skyway bridge, the causeways on both sides of the causeway. And Keep Pinellas Beautiful, usually I've worked with Tampa Bay Watch, and I show up as a Tampa Bay Watch volunteer, but it's a Keep Pinellas Beautiful event. And once a year, all these established nonprofits and for-profit and environmental industry, the environmental industry GDP, they have a convention down at the beach last year, was at Serrano. It must have been 50 tents. I think we could have a presence there as the PSTA as well. You know, they're, we'll figure it.
All right, I think that sounds great. Peter Ray has his hand up.
Go ahead, Peter.
The St. Pete Bike Club does, every other month trail cleanup. But we have some experience with that, and I'd be glad to help, with that. And it, we've kind of learned as we went, over the last year and a half about what to clean up and how far around to go. I'd be glad to work with whoever. I guess one question, it begs the question though of, can we have more than one, member of this committee at a cleanup?
Yes, what we would do in that case is it would be announced.
Okay.
So we would announce it, I'll be there, or somebody will be there, we'll make sure we have staff to, if there are any notes that need to be taken about discussion, fine. But yeah, the cleanup, and Keep Pinellas Beautiful, I'm sure the bike club, they do announce when they're gonna do them. So as long as we make it a formal announcement, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'd be glad to help. I share notes with what we've learned.
Peter, does the bike club work with Keep Pinellas Beautiful?
Yeah, that's where we started. I think that's how we got assigned to the mile stretch that we're responsible for, and just kind of what equipment we needed and what measurements they wanted, weight for the materials and how far a foot we need to kind of go, what we're really responsible for. And then we also turn it into a little bit of a social occasion of going out for, an adult beverage afterwards or breakfast or coffee or whatever you want. But we found that every other month was a good period for getting enough volunteers to show up. So.
Now, if you've liaisoned this before, I'd be glad to step aside and I'll support you and watch you, and I'd like to be able to learn how to do it. Who do you call, who does contact people?
I was not the original liaison, I'm not the liaison right now, but I participate every other month and have picked up stuff along the way from bike club board members who have taken that responsibility on, and I'd be glad to facilitate any kind of discussion with the bike club person about, what we've learned, and as things go, I'd be glad to work with you. Part of it is just finding somebody who'd be responsible each time we actually do it, just because of vacation schedules or travel schedules to fill in. And we'll make sure that the bags and the pickup equipment and everything gets done. So.
Yes, now, can you and I talk outside of this meeting?
No, unfortunately, so go through me, I'll be the filter, and then a lot of you, what we'll do is we'll make the email out to the whole track.
Okay.
But you can't talk with each other, but you can send me something and I can say, okay, like I've done with Elizabeth at Fort Pinellas, she'll send me some documents from the meetings, and then I send them out to you, which actually you're gonna be getting after this meeting, some more. And we'll have to approach it that way. That's one of the little bugaboos about the way the Sunshine is set up.
All right.
But I'll be glad to work with you, Rich. We'll figure out a way.
Okay, great.
I see Mark Boyce has his hand up. Mark?
Yeah, I was just wondering, the Sunshine Law is, at least the way it's been presented to us, is troubling, I don't know how we could relax picking up trash, because if we, you just normally would say, I wonder why we're out here picking up trash rather than the contractors, and, say something like that just because it comes to your mind, or, oh, this is great, we're saving PSTA a lot of money. And when you say, the way it's being presented to the track committee is, boy, you better watch your mouth, And I assume this kind of intense pressure, it goes for the track employees too. And the track employees talking to all of our people that we hire to cut routes, and because obviously everybody wants to know who's saying what, who wants what cut, and who doesn't. So there's a lot of stuff happening that's not just at these meetings, And all I'm hearing is, track is under scrutiny, and I'm hearing the board is under scrutiny. So much so that 2 board members and 2 track members can't take a ride on a bus together. You know, so is this intensity for all of track employees?
It's for the entire state. For, when you're looking at elected officials, bodies of elected officials, it's the entire state. And like our county commissioners, they cannot meet outside of their commission meetings unless it is a noticed meeting.
But if you're not talking about issues relative to, that you would be voting on, I mean, when we had gatherings for, you know, the opening of the beach, transit area there and so forth, there were more than one of us that are track members. And we would talk, you know, I've gotten together for coffee or lunch with Elizabeth, and we've talked about non-transit issues. We've talked about MS issues and so on. So, you know, we can still be human beings. We just can't discuss things that we may be voting on. Is that right?
I'm going to defer. I see Brad's hand up, and he's the expert here.
I'm wondering, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you're on the money, Chair Gloria. That is correct. I mean, to Mark's point, yeah, you can definitely be a normal person. Don't feel pressure on this. I think, you know, if the track committee would prefer for like the riding the bus initiative, which I think is a fantastic idea, we could arrange for, you know, two or more track members to go along on the ride together with a board member. There would need to be a couple things. We would have to notice it for sure. But and then, as Gloria, you just said, the law does not allow you to talk about track business or anything reasonably likely to come up at a track meeting in the future while you're with another track member out of the sunshine, right? So it's totally fine if you guys see each other out in the world or on a bus together, or if we schedule you to go on a bus together with, or we send out saying, I don't know, Chair PSDA Dan Strachey is going to be on a bus today. Who wants to go? And if 2 of you want to go, that's fine. We'll just notice it and properly, and then just don't talk about track stuff. You know, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you. Do I see, does Jay have her hand?
Yes, Jay's got her hand.
Yes, I do. So yeah, you know, honestly, living with the sunshine law isn't really that difficult. We just have to be particular on what we do at what time. But I will say it'll be hard to not talk about track business on the bus if we're having a ride along. So somebody probably needs to be there to take notes if it's going to be 2 or more of us members. Also, I don't know. It's not like PSDA has been under, I don't know, scrutiny over the last year because of other elected officials and people in certain areas having issues with some of the wonderful work that we do. But the law is definitely not because of that. I just wanted to say that. And there's somebody else on the call who has experience with having to live while having to under the governance of the Sunshine Law, and I'm pretty sure if people wanted, she could tell you how difficult or not it is to live with it. But it's not, to me, it's not really difficult at all.
Okay.
Oh, if I wasn't clear, I was talking about Daughter Rights. Daughter Rights used to be one of our city council SAP.
I thought I was getting called out. I'm not an attorney, and we can send you, the written guidelines for the Sunshine Law, just for reference. But I think everything Brad and Gloria have said so far, and Bob said, is right on the nose. Typically, I mean, the Sunshine Law is actually a good thing. It was brought about by Governor Ruben Askew, and it was to prevent these quote-unquote cigar field backroom meetings where things get discussed out of the light of day. It does end up sort of making, it does set forth a policy and a process for how we set forth these kind of meetings, where it seems like that's an awfully high threshold for going to pick up garbage. I would say that it really applies to discussions about anything coming up that is on an agenda item that would reasonably come before the board to vote on. So I would not suggest we schedule a trash cleanup if it's right before the board votes on a contract for a trash pickup. But anything we say that's retroactive looking backwards is fine. You can actually talk about a vote that happened in the past. We can't talk about things that would influence or be relevant to a future vote. And if you're ever confused about it, my advice would be change the subject.
I think that's good advice.
Right. Thanks, everyone. Any other comments about either of the two initiatives that we've talked about? I think what I'm hearing is that we're going to be working with Bob to try to flesh these out a little bit, both the cleanup and also the ride along. And so for next meeting, we can, like when I'm presenting to the board next week, I'm not going to tell them about these specifically. Although the one thing I had mentioned to Bob, and I wanted to get all of you to tell me whether you agree or disagree with this. I do want to ask the board to make sure that all of their cell phones have the transit app on it. I don't know if they do, but I would like them to all install the transit app on their phones, because we live and breathe with that. And and it's such a good educational tool about our system, so that ultimately when they are going to be riding along, they will already know what the transit app tells them, when the bus is going to be there, what buses go by that location, how you get from one place to another. And so I think that as a first step, I want to, at the board meeting, ask each of the board members, or ask them as a group, to have them, if they haven't already, to please put the transit app onto their cell phones and spend some time looking at it. What do you all think?
See nodding heads and thumbs up. Great.
Okay. All right.
I think it's a very good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a good first step, you know what I mean? So it's like they're sticking their toes in the water, when you're trading stocks, and in fact, I think I'm gonna mention this way, they always say before you put your money into a stock, do some paper trading. Take a look at, pretend that you're buying those stocks and then follow them for a week and see what those stocks do. I guess that basically I'm asking them to do paper bus riding by getting the transit app and then looking at what would be involved.
I like that analogy. I see Conrad has his hand up.
Conrad.
From a numerical standpoint, how many track members are there and how many board members are there?
15 board members.
Yeah, 15 board members. I think we have 12 on track now.
So okay, so that answers my question. We could at least get one of, each one of us could at least get one if we so desire.
Yeah. And I tend to move toward being the most cautious. I'm guessing that because of their schedules, we're gonna have so much advance notice, it'll be a piece of cake to notice it, and then,
No,
you know, I will go, or one of my colleagues to take notes, so it'll be, anyone can go.
And is the track committee at full strength or at this time?
Actually, we're down a student rep from USF. I'm sorry, it could be from SBC or USF.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Richard Powell has his hand up.
Yes, just a desire, I'd like to ride with a board member, but if I could, I'd like to ride with the board member from South Pasadena. That's where I live. So, you know, we have something in common, we're neighbors. I know that maybe not always possible, but that would be my.
So that makes sense. That makes sense for us to ride the routes that we routinely take, you know, and so those are very familiar to us. I would think the same thing. I'm a North County person, so yeah. Okay, any other inputs on either of these? Otherwise, what we're going to do is that we will, you know, we can definitely, you know, communicate with Bob over the course of the next month, and then we will finalize all this next month when we get together for our in-person meeting.
I'll send out a list and ask who you'd like to ride with, and Richard Powell already has, is that Mayor Reed, who's South Pasadena?
That would be, yeah.
Yeah, Tom Reed.
Yeah, Tom Reed, okay.
I think you'd be willing. He went on a ride recently with me, so I think he's one. And I know our current commissioner from Dunedin would definitely go with you, Gloria.
Oh, I've spoken with them already, so yeah, I will definitely do that. Okay. All right.
Mayor Saraki might want to ride with you all.
That's right, he would. He would.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, let's move on to the next item on the agenda. Is Jacob Lubutka around so that we can have?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hi, sorry to have kept you waiting.
Oh, no, you're good. No, I always love hearing the things that y'all talk about. Also appreciate your plug for the transit app. It's a frequent user myself.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, good afternoon, everybody. Again, I'm Jacob Lubutka, planning manager here at PSTA, and I'm here to give you an update on where we're at with the Connected Community Bus Network. As Gloria mentioned earlier, we're going to be having a public meeting next week, the Bus Network and Bagels meeting, where we're going to be, prior to the start of the public meeting, we'll be taking public comment at the dais in the boardroom at 9 a.m. We're opening up the lobby at 8 a.m. and we're going to have a display with various boards showing the zoomed in details of the network recommendations, so we can have a lot of one-on-one conversations with riders and other community members and stakeholders who may have questions about some of the changes. So if you're free, feel free to come on out to that if you want to chat with any of us, or just grab some free bagels and coffee. No judgment either way. So I just want to give you an update on where we're at and the results of some of our recent outreach efforts. So these first couple of slides are probably going to look familiar. So this is just kind of a refresh on some of the high-level details of the plan. So as I've mentioned before, these are a set of cost-neutral recommendations. So this is within our existing budget. The one exception to that being service development grant funding we've received from the Florida Department of Transportation for the enhanced service on the upcoming Spark route on the 34th Street South Corridor. And of course, as the Connected Community Bus Network name implies, this plan, of course, functions as a network, and we want to improve the usability of our network for our riders. And this network also has what I call the 3 C's to try to be clear, consistent, and connected. We want route schedules to be a lot easier to understand. All routes are or most routes are gonna operate 7 days a week, which of course, as we've discussed before, we know a lot of our service drops off on weekends, particularly on Sundays. And we want to improve the design of the network as a whole and routes individually to improve both the timing and the transfer experience for riders. Next slide, please. So have you seen this map before? This is the map of our existing services. So just as a quick refresh, the routes in red run every 15 minutes like the Sunrunner, purple every 20 like the 60, blue every 30 like the 79, And then green are the hourly routes like the 62. The dashed routes are limited service like our express routes over to Tampa. And the yellow are our on-demand zones. Next slide, please. Again, a map you have seen before with the set of network recommendations, or that you've mostly seen before, and I'll give you that caveat, more details on that in a moment. Sort of the few buckets of changes that we're looking to achieve through this plan. Again, like I've mentioned before, that we know that we have a lot more weekend demand now than we did, just several years ago. Devin Deal actually just gave a great presentation recently to a committee about changes in our weekend ridership, and that our weekend ridership has actually rebounded a lot better over the last few years than our weekday ridership. So of course we want to be responsive to that. It's also a very frequent rider comment, as we've talked about before over the years. We also want to be responsive to the fact that we're a tourist area and improve our trolley services. Capitalize on our core routes and improve the frequency of services like we're doing with the Spark service. We want to increase access to jobs. So like I mentioned before, this plan does increase the amount of jobs the average rider can travel to within an hour, particularly on evenings and weekends. And we want to decrease travel time with timed transfers to reduce the amount of time riders have to wait to connect between routes. Next slide, please. So we have done, can you go back one slide? Thank you. So we have done a lot of outreach in this last phase, so we can really try to get into as many different places and as many different communities as possible to make sure that the community and our riders are informed about what we're proposing to change. So this is just kind of a high-level overview of a lot of the places we went to for outreach. So we did a lot of direct engagement with riders, both digitally on social media and through Transit app, as well as a lot of in-person engagement. We tabled at Grand Central, like the bottom right picture, Park Street, Countryside Mall, most major transfer areas, we at least set up a few times, and then we were tabled a bunch of time at Grand Central and Park Street since we know we have a lot of riders at those locations. In addition, one of our public engagement consultants, EXP, on this project, they did a lot of bus ride-alongs and had some direct conversations with riders and wrote the survey. We did email blasts, ride cards at community centers, A-frames at high ridership transfer areas. We did a lot. I even went on a podcast as shown on the picture on the left side, which that was a pretty neat experience. And the picture just doesn't show the lovely part of the podcast where I accidentally spilled my coffee. So I was multitasking, telling the community about the changes to the network while dealing with my spilled coffee mess. But thankfully, I was still able to get the word out there. In addition to all the public engagement that we did, we've also done a significant amount of in-reach, talking particularly with operations folks to make sure that this is operationally viable. And as I mentioned before, they've been involved in every step of the project, even from the route design workshop we probably had about a year ago. And so we've had focus groups with operators, with supervisors, CSRs, we've had operator lounge displays. We're actually doing another display ahead of the public meeting next week. I'm actually going to be getting up in time to staff a table in our operators lounge from 5 to 7 a.m. So anybody that knows me personally knows that I'm not exactly always an early riser, but I'm going to do it because I want to be there when our operators are there. So I'm going to be having lots of coffee to be perked up first thing in the morning. But excited that we can continue to answer any questions or take comments internally about the network. Next slide, please. And so as a result of some of these both community conversations as well as in-reach with operations team, we've already started to make a few changes to the network based on some of these conversations. So we have a list of 4 changes that we've made, some based on community engagement, some based on internal engagement, and some based on our own observations. So starting with the first one, so we made a slight modification to the Route 16 in the downtown St. Pete area. Like I mentioned before, one of the things that we're changing in this plan in downtown St. Pete is the removal of the Route 32, which historically doesn't get a whole lot of ridership, but the ridership that is on that route is obviously a very consistent ridership, particularly those individuals trying to go between the senior housing in Methodist Town with the Publix on 3rd Street. And so in the first iteration of that route, the 16 as it was designed downtown did connect those 2 destinations. But one of the things we did hear from our consultant team, EXP, when they did a ride-along on the 32, is that a few of those riders do also use the bus to go to medical appointments. So we made a slight deviation of the route downtown to have it go a little further south to connect to one of the stops at 6th Avenue South, so it could at least be a little bit closer to some of the medical offices in that area. The other change that we made, and this was actually, I believe this came up in the track meeting that unfortunately was not able to make last month. I believe there was a conversation about the Route 22. The change we initially made to that showed the route going down 16th Street rather than connecting to 4th Street like it did. I think it was initially done that way to have a quicker connection to downtown St. Pete. But that being said, we heard the comment about wanting to access 4th Street more quickly, particularly for those wanting to travel northbound on 4th Street. And so we checked with our consultant team, and we were able to kind of recorrect that and have it more similar to its current routing, and then it'll continue south to downtown via 4th Street instead of 16th Street. The next comment was a result of a meeting with some of our union leadership staff. You'll see that the route in orange, the Route 74B, one of the variants of the 74 in this plan, used to be combined with the route in red, or the Route 65. And so it was initially done to provide another one-seat transfer option between Central County and the Clearwater area. However, one of the concerns the union team raised was that it was such a long route and they were worried about the reliability of the service and the on-time performance of the service. Particularly due to traffic on Park Boulevard, they expressed a strong concern that any traffic on Park Boulevard would have repercussions for the rest of the route. And so we heard that, and as somebody that's on Park Boulevard sometimes, I can certainly see that concern. So we revised it to more closely reflect how the 65 operates today to reduce the length of the route, but we still maintain that deviation you can see on the western side to the Indian Shores ramp there to have a beach connection in that area. The last change we made was more of an internal observation. So initially, the routes 78 and 61 were rerouted on the southern end of those routes north of Park Street to better be in more of a straight line. Because if anybody who rides those routes know, they kind of crisscross one another, and 61 goes up MLK Avenue for part of the route, the 78 goes up Betty Lane for part of the route, and there's a little bit of crisscrossing. So the thought was to straighten those routes out, since that was one of the goals of this plan. However, in so doing, we realized at a staff level that we were missing some pretty high ridership areas, and that there are certain areas with high ridership whose frequency would significantly decrease if we were to do that. So we did go back and put the routing back to its original route in those areas, so the level of service was reflective of the ridership. And so these are the changes that we've made so far, and then these are reflected in the map that was just shown on the screen. And so we're going to see what comes up at the public meeting next week, and if necessary, make more changes as needed. And we'll certainly keep you up to date on that. Next slide, please. So a significant part of this phase of engagement in between end of November and early January was a community-wide survey to gauge rider and community reaction to the bus plan recommendations. So I'm just going to kind of go over just a few high-level things that came out of that survey. So one of the questions that we asked a few questions about survey respondents, and one of the ones that I think is the most interest to me, and maybe many of you in this meeting today, is we asked, how often have you, the respondent, ridden transit? Because of course we want this to be a community-wide survey, and we want to hear from as many voices as possible. That being said, we also want to make sure that this is informed by the rider experience. So shown here is a distribution of how often survey respondents say they ride. So out of the about 415 or so respondents, roughly half of them ride on a daily basis. And so that's obviously pretty good. That at least 50% are boots on the ground riding every day. About 140 or so respondents had various riding habits. Some rode once a week, some rode a few times a month, a few rode a few times a year, and about 20% of respondents didn't use transit in the last year. So I think this distribution captures a diversity of riding habits, while also being particularly weighted towards the daily riders. Next slide, please, Bob. So we asked several questions, or rather we posed several statements to respondents on if they agree that the draft network will be better. So this is the last question in a series of questions, because we asked on the individual level if they thought it'd be better for them, for people they know, and for the county overall. And so for our purposes today, I've just kind of focused on that last question, the last statement. So the statement was posed to respondents, compared to the existing network, the draft network will be better for the county overall. And so respondents were able to answer, and many of you who took the survey likely know this, you were able to respond on a scale of strongly agree on the left shown in dark blue to strongly disagree on the right shown in red. And so we have pretty good positive responses to the statement. Roughly 2/3 of respondents agreed that the network will be better for the county overall. About a quarter of respondents neither agreed nor disagreed, so they likely didn't see anything that was a major effect, or maybe things for them would be about the same if they were a regular rider. And about 10% of respondents disagreed overall. And so when we talked with the consultant team about this is actually, from their experience, a lot more positive than they've seen with other systems nationwide who have enacted similar changes. Next slide, please. So one of the questions that came up at the committee level from one of our board members was, okay, well, that's great that, it's so positive amongst everybody, but what do the people who interact with the system the most think about this? And is there a difference between the people who ride daily and everybody as a whole? So one of the things we did in response to that question was to cross-reference that last slide I just showed you, but provide answers specifically for those who said they were daily riders, which is about 50% of survey respondents. And so that's what's shown on the screen for that same previous statement compared to the existing network. The draft network will be better for the county overall. And so roughly a similar percentage either strongly agreed or agreed, about just over 2/3 agreed, about 21% neither agreed nor disagreed, and it was about the same level of disagreement. So it's actually, I'm glad that the board member asked this question, because it was interesting to see that the sentiment of those who experience the system the most is similar to the sentiment of the average survey respondent. Next slide, please. So in addition to the sliding scale type questions, we also wanted to hear specifics on what things people liked in the plan and what were the things that people would change. And so the things that people liked are, increased frequency on the core route, such as what we're doing with the Spark service, extended evening service, improved weekend service, particularly on Sundays. People liked better connections between routes and the simplicity of the network design. And all of these things make sense because this has been a multi-phase project, and these are the things that we've heard from riders both throughout this project and in the 8.5 years that I've been at PSDA. All of these things are things that I've been hearing from riders for years. And so that's what we're seeking to improve on with the plan. But of course, we also asked, what would be changed about the plan? And while, there were some route-specific comments, there weren't that many of the same route. But the themes that there were a lot of the same of are reflected here. So I think a lot of respondents, wanted even more frequency, more service during evenings and weekends, and a reduction in travel times, particularly for those cross-county rides that I'm sure many of you know can be quite long. And so I think this network moves us in the direction of some of these things, but I think this is kind of hitting the reset button and saying, okay, this is the backbone, and we're certainly making a lot of improvements, but we want to continue to make improvements beyond the scope of just this network study. So I know, for example, a long-term project we're looking at is improvements to the L19 corridor for a future premium transit service to be responsive of improving cross-county travel times, because that's something that we've heard a lot, particularly for north-south travel, that it takes quite a while. So we want to go beyond this and in the future years continue to make improvements to be responsive to some of those comments. Next slide, please. And so, like I mentioned, shown here is our lovely graphic for our bus network and bagels event. So like I mentioned, if you want to come out, chat with me or anybody else, or grab some bagels and coffee, you're more than welcome to join us out. And then a little behind the scenes FYI is every year we submit a progress report to the Florida Department of Transportation for our transit development plan. So we'll certainly be incorporating the work on this project into that. And you'll likely hear more on this over the coming year because we have a major update of the TDP that's due in 2026. So stay tuned for things regarding that. And then following the meeting this month, the PSTA board is going to be taking a final vote in March on the plan. And if they approve the plan, we'll spend the next 6 months after the board vote, working very hard on implementation of the service, working to schedule the service, work with facilities to put new bus stops out or take bus stops out as needed, and doing just a lot of the work that's needed to make sure we're ready for a launch as early as this October. And so I think that is at the end of my deck, so I will pause here and hand it back to the chair and take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jacob. Conrad has his hand up.
I didn't see anything or hear anything about the boat rides.
Oh, you are correct. So yes, the boat rides will still be happening. So the focus of this plan is the bus network specifically. That being said, we're still in parallel to this effort, launching things like the Clearwater Ferry, which is already in service, and preparing for a future season of the Cross Bay Ferry service. So those are still things that are happening in parallel with this effort.
And I heard you mention something about looking at new bus stops and maybe taking away some bus stops.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if I made a suggestion about because of the people that want to vandalize the bus stop numbers that are at the low level, if we could make that bus stop sign to be put at the higher level also at the same time, so that the average person, I'm pretty sure the average person that's vandalizing those bus, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and I recall you mentioning that before, Conrad. So yeah, I think this is something I'm going to take to our facilities and communications team to see if, as long as we're doing this system-wide revamp, if there's an opportunity to change the bus stop signage. I'm not sure if that's going to be necessarily part of the scope of this project or not, but if there's certainly an opportunity, certainly something we can look into.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next question, I see Sebastian has his hand up.
Yes, would it be possible to get a copy of all of these graphs that you showed us, or would I be jumping the gun?
Wait, I'm sorry, you said the graphs I showed you?
Yeah, all this information you just gave us.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I'm extremely interested in, and I'm wondering if I can get a written copy. I'll pick it up or somehow I can get one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I can, so I'm sorry, you said like a printed out copy, or could I email you one?
You can email it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I mean, I'm happy to email you both this presentation, and you might also be interested in the presentation I gave last month, where I provide answers to some of the other survey questions as well. But I'm happy to send all of that over to you, Sebastian.
You get my email from Bob?
That will do, and I'll make sure you have all of those materials.
I certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
If you send it to me, I'll send it out to the whole track.
Okay, no, great. I'll make sure that everybody has both this slide deck and the board slide deck from last month.
Great, thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? Oh, Sebastian? Did you?
No, I'm trying to move my end.
Oh.
I got it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jacob. Oh,
Brian.
Richard McDaniel has a question.
Yeah, I'm wondering why the two routes that go east-west on 22nd Avenue and then one on 9th Avenue, why do they both leave busy roads to go onto back roads?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So this came up in the route design process last year. So there are certain segments that are higher ridership on some of the adjacent streets or certain trip generators that we wanted to make sure that we served. So it means, for example, with the 22, it diverts down to, I believe, 17th Avenue North. So it can more closely serve some of the grocery stores like the Publix, the Winn-Dixie, and some of the retail that's a little further off from the main artery of 22nd Avenue North.
Anything else? Any other questions?
I think, I thought it was a hand that went away.
I'm sorry. All right.
Chair, I would just like to say quickly, thank you, Richard, for your comment about the Route 22, because as Jacob just showed, we heard you and we made your suggestion, your change.
Thank you. Conrad's hand is back up. Conrad? Oh,
Yeah, is that, are we gonna have more or less, on some routes, there are what's called a timed point?
right, time.
Are we going to have, I like time points because, I mean, I know we can't have every, stop a timed point, but there only seem to be some routes with timed points, and when bus drivers get to those points, they are supposed to stop and wait. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I think they're beneficial to people that, when they know that, well, you know, you can, I may not be there now, but the bus is gonna still wait for me for the next 3 or 4 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's definitely something we want to, we do certainly currently schedule with time points, and that's something we're going to definitely continue with the very hard work of our scheduling team, to maintain a good time point system with this new network.
And I see Richard has his hand back up again, Richard McDaniel.
Yeah, I do appreciate that the 22 was put down the 4th Street. I am a bit concerned about having to cross the roads to get to the northbound side. Right now it's timed really good where you can almost always get the 4th Street connection going north without waiting. I mean, there's almost no wait. It's great. It makes me feel like I'm in a big city with good transit connections. I mean, like one thing, there's that 17th Avenue crosswalk on 4th Street. So I'd be concerned that people would end up dashed across the road trying to make that connection. And what, I mean, I hope people would have more sense than to do that. But if you see the route going, you know, people want to get the route. I hope they don't put themselves in a bad situation to do that. Like, so the 17th Avenue crosswalk, I could see where that, if the stops were kind of right on opposite side of the 4th Street, where that might make it easy to jump across the street there, a little bit less, problematic crossing the road. But I do appreciate that was changed.
Absolutely, and maybe that's something we can do kind of in the implementation phase from a communications perspective. Maybe like, for example, there could be special route messaging for the Route 22, educating riders on like what that transfer looks like now that it's not going to do that same movement that you referenced. But no, thank you for your comment.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up, so thank you very much, Jacob. Really appreciate the update and the answering all the questions. So
Absolutely, I always love ending my work day with y'all. Y'all are always a great bunch to talk about this stuff with.
great, thank you. Okay, just looking at the last items on our agenda, and we are getting toward the end of our time. Are there any other business that we need to discuss? Please raise your hand and I can call on you. Bob?
The other businesses, I want to remind everybody, Localtopia is this Saturday in Williams Park, 10 to 5. The Sunrunner will be free that day. We'll also have a lot of extra Sunrunner buses out there. Last year, that was our #1 ridership day on the entire line. So that looks to be exciting. And I want to just remind everybody again, a week from today, 8 a.m. in the morning is our bus network and bagels with the public hearing and workshop just before the board meeting. So if you're interested, please, you're all invited to come join us.
Thank you.
Are we talking about
Sorry.
a PSTA?
At PSTA, yeah.
Yes.
For the next meeting, I'd written down there are a couple things that we did want to cover at the next meeting. So again, it'll be important that you come to the live meeting next time. We are going to then finalize all our initiatives. We are going to have a presentation that was the one that the board had by Devin Deal, talking about the just rider trends and how it relates also to bus sizes and so forth, which I found fascinating. We're going to have some discussion. There was a question about the water, the Clearwater taxi, and so at least I'd like to know the updates on exactly how does that work? Where does it leave from, and what are the schedules like, and how does it work as a PSTA rider to go on the Clearwater ferry? And then the other one that I'd asked about is any discussion about the new service from Clearwater St. Pete Airport to the beaches, from PIE to the beaches. And I think what I said to Bob is that, you know, as transit riders, I know people ask us, oh, what about this? I heard about this on the news, and so I know I'm personally very interested in all the new services and getting in updates from PSTA on that. So those are things that we will cover at the next meeting. Did I see another hand? I thought for a second I saw a hand, but did anyone have anything else? Beg pardon?
Yeah, sorry, that was me. I was just gonna say, I wish I could go to Localtopia, but I am working those hours, so.
Sorry. Okay, all right. Oh, Conrad, your hand's up again.
Yeah, I'd like to ask another question. I use the PSTA Access app in order to schedule rides.
Yes.
And I don't know how many other people use that, but could you have someone look into that? It's in my opinion, it's kind of cumbersome. Why can't, in other words, almost all my rides are gonna be always paying cash, always, now since I've got my wheelchair, always using my wheelchair. But there's no way to in other words, I just can't preset all those so that it's always taking the same payment, the same rideability. I don't know. Do you understand what I'm saying for those people?
I have the exact same experience. Bob, who do we talk with about that? Because I know, Kim probably uses it and Conrad does, I do. That just to get that app to have it set certain defaults, the fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll send these, I'm taking notes, and I'll send these over to our mobility department.
Yeah. I'm sure Bonnie, I've seen,
Yeah.
I know that she has already told me, she's heard that same thing that Conrad and Laura, you brought up, that there should be more ability within the app to preset things that never change. Yeah, so I know she has communicated with our company, Spare, that made that. And we're working on it, I'm sure.
Good, thank you. Oh, good. Hands are going up now. I saw, I think Sebastian and then Teresa.
Right.
Sebastian?
My question is for Brad Miller. I understand that we're updating our computers on the buses. Let me just explain that. Last Sunday, I was at Largo Mall, waiting to take the 59 to the beach. 3 buses came with complex signs. Well, as it turned out, one of the buses was a beach bus. The guy didn't say anything. I was at the Largo Mall a half hour before the bus was due to come in. I wound up being there an hour and a half because one of the drivers did not say that he was a beach bus and the sign was wrong. And I talked to one of the drivers about this. He said that they were updating the computers, and particularly the problem was on Sunday. I had one driver tell me it's on the older buses, it's not on the electrics. That's not true, because that problem was on the electrics. So my question is, where do we stand with this?
Now, and you're talking about the sign on the front of the bus, that you see from the outside.
Say it again?
You're talking about the sign, you know, that, tells you which bus it is, which way it's going, right?
It's been happening frequently on Sundays. Now, the places that are affected, besides Largo Mall, would be the transit centers.
Right.
The one at Oakville Boulevard, you know, the one at Pinellas Park, because that could be very confusing.
Yeah, thank you for telling me, yeah. I mean, I can't think of why it would be happening on Sunday more. I don't think that's accurate, but I've written it down. We'll definitely check on it. That is not supposed to happen. Thank you for saying something, Sebastian. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that happened. Okay, and I did just get a note, Bob, you had said, in the chat that the public hearing it's actually going to be on the 26th, which is Wednesday, the 26th. So I'm not sure what was said, but just so everyone knows, that's the day. And in fact, an email was sent out to everyone with the flyer on that too, so, but thank you, that having been pointed out. Okay, I don't see any other hands, and does anyone have anything else? Otherwise, we're going to end our meeting then. Thank you, everyone, for coming and participating.
All right, good night, y'all. Well, it's not nighttime yet, but bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next meeting's March 18th in person,
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right.
so we'll see you then.
See you then.
See you all then.
Here.